In those days, there were oceans of light, and cities in the skies, and wild flying beasts of bronze. There were herds of crimson cattle that roared and were taller than castles. There were shrill, viridian things that haunted bleak rivers. It was a time of gods, manifesting themselves upon our world in all her aspects. A time of giants who walked in water, of mindless sprites and misshapen creatures who could be summoned by an ill-considered thought, but driven away only in pain of some fearful sacrifice. Of magics, phantoms, unstable nature, impossible events, insane paradoxes, dreams come true, dreams gone awry, of nightmares assuming reality. It was a rich time and a dark time, the time of the sword rulers.
So in case we didn't make it clear, today we're talking about the lore of the Bomberman franchise. No, I'm kidding. Welcome, everyone, to the Tomodachi Bros podcast, where today we have many members of our esteemed group, including the brothers Pooghym, Ditaku, and Noodle.
Hi, guys.
I am an aspect of the eternal annoying person.
That tracks, actually. And of course, we also have Master Clockwork.
I am alive.
That's great. I'm proud of you, man.
You're always alive, Clockwork.
And for good reason.
It doesn't feel like that sometimes. Sometimes I go into this random super of just association, and then I realize, oh wait, I'm actually a person. I should probably act like one.
That's because you work in retail, dude. I've been there. So
that's very true.
Today, I believe Dr. Ditaku and Dr. Noodle have a fascinating chat for us, as I understand it.
Yeah. Yes, and this happened because, I had a problem. I went onto YouTube, specifically on Warhammer shorts, and I saw this one short, and it just made me go, huh? Because it was about the warp. Specifically about the fact that they were like, oh, by the way, so you know how there's the warp? And I'm like, yeah, I know about the warp. And they're like, you know about the chaos gods, right? I'm like, yeah, I know about the chaos gods. They're like, you know about the deep chaos? I'm like, oh boy, here we go. What's the deep chaos there, YouTube short? And they're like, the deep chaos is what's underneath the chaos gods. And I'm like, okay, what, pray tell, could be underneath, more archetypal, more like fundamental than these gigantic alien psychic demons made up of fundamental aspects of human nature? And then that made me start to think about what chaos actually was. Like, not like in a metaphysical sense, like what chaos the narrative force was. And because I'm a giant nerd, I returned back to what I knew about chaos. Because here's the thing, Games Workshop is not terribly creative. They basically are plagiarists. You know, in fact, they are plagiarists. I'm just going to put that down. And they can fight me on this one because they have stolen a number of things. Specifically, like the 8-pointed star comes directly from Moorcock. And a lot of actually their lore comes from Moorcock too. So being the, once again, giant nerd that I am, I returned to Moorcock, mostly because I really liked his work, and also because it's been a while since I actually sat down and read it. And with that in mind, I went to the trilogy of books that really kind of were the most basically laid out his metaphysics in the most plain sense. That here's the thing with Moorcock, it's not like a overarching narrative. It's a bunch of little stories, and so you get little snippets of lore here and there. And the cool thing is that a lot of it is pretty much like consistent. Even though it's over like a 50-year period, he's actually pretty consistent. And the bits where he's not consistent can be explained away by the fact that a lot of the people that are not consistent literally are out of the faction that are, lol lamau. I can be whatever I want to be, Dave. So, it doesn't matter if it's different in this universe versus the other universe because I can be whatever I want to be. So, yeah. And in that mind, I went to the Pooghym trilogy, specifically the first Pooghym trilogy, because there's actually two of them. And I was able to read the first two books. I didn't realize I didn't have the third one, but it was a good time. And shall I kind of recap what actually goes on? Are you guys familiar with Pooghym at all? Are you guys even familiar with like the Eternal Champion at all?
I know of, but you're going to have to go into the deets if you're going to explain it. And honestly, I say you might as well embrace this opportunity to just lean into it.
I agree.
Not like our listeners are going to know for the most part.
Okay, so I guess you have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that Pooghym is not Michael Moorcock. Michael Moorcock, who is a British science fiction fantasy author, it was not his first like major hero. He had an earlier hero who honestly is actually my favorite, Elric of Melniboné. Elric of Melniboné is basically responsible for pretty much dark fantasy as we understand it now. And he's a really cool character simultaneously because he's basically the kind of a commentary slash like I wouldn't really say deconstruction because I don't think he really like is trying to deconstruct Conan, but it is kind of a commentary on Conan, where Conan is this big, scary, strong guy who's like, and this is more in like because of Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's just seen as this huge dude who just like destroys people through the power of him, being strong. In the stories, he's actually a lot more intelligent. Whereas Elric is not strong. He actually is incredibly weak. He's actually like disabled at birth by what is initially called albinism, but is later revealed through some of his author notes, ironically, because apparently he got disparaged in his initial writings. Because you have to understand, this was not a book initially. This was actually a bunch of pulp stories, like very short stories that he submitted to a series of pulp magazines. And apparently kind of the the fanfiction.net, like there'll be a critic who will respond to a fanfiction, and then the author like shoots back something, and the two of them kind of have a back and forth. Apparently that's not new. This happened in the pulp series, and we actually have, at least Noodle has, in the Elric series Stealer of Souls. Michael Moorcock wrote a very scathing kind of, no, you guys, you don't understand. It's not because he actually has albinism. He actually has silver skin sickness, which is something that Melnibonians can have. And it's because he's actually deeply inbred because he is one of the imperial lineage. And also they did like evil alchemical experiments on him, which is also the reason why he needs to do space cocaine in order to even like walk around. No, seriously, this is actually a thing. It was the 1960s. It was crazy. And so you have this very, very sickly guy who really cannot even walk around without either drugs or his bestest friend / worstest enemy / his girlfriend, basically, because it is actually female, / his basically like kind of a analogy for drugs / like masculine power, Stormbringer. What is Stormbringer, you might ask? It is a gigantic evil sword. A black rune blade which consumes souls and has an intelligence onto itself. And oh, by the way, she is malicious. Very, very, very malicious. And in case you go, no, I'm right, I'm reading something into this. In Stormbringer, the first book, which is actually chronicles the end of the world of the Young Kingdoms, which is the setting of Elric, Stormbringer kills Elric, and then as he's dying and she's drinking his soul, she goes, "Farewell, friend. I was far more evil than you could ever hope to be." And then she proceeds to fly away, cursing the overarching intelligence of the universe. Fun. Now, if you think to yourself and go, wow, that sounds a lot like any possible number of things I could think of, Soul Calibur, any number of Warhammer things, The Witcher, yes, and they all stole liberally from Elric. But here's the thing, Michael Moorcock also kind of stole from Elric because he kept realizing, it's like, I keep making this like really roguish, just nihilistic, depressed guy with some crazy weapon, and they just keep encountering the same types of monsters. Wait a second, I can do something with this. So he concocted the concept of not only the multiverse, which is to say, basically a bunch of parallel universes all together in one overarching setting. Yes, he was the one who actually came up with this. Yes, he basically created like the entire concept of planescaping as Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons. Basically, all modern fantasy has been stealing liberally from this one very, very prolific British guy. I cannot just tell you how much people have been stealing from this guy. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's not even like small things, because like they're like, the more I learn about what he's written, the more I'm like, I am just in awe, because he basically wrote Mystara before Mystara was a thing. Or not Mystara, Spelljammer. The entire concept of magic starships flying around in magic space trying to stop, evil that was trying to overarch, like basically like control magic space through the use of star lanes. He did that. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. So yes, basically in all of his writing, you will see aspects of the Eternal Champion. There will be some guy or girl or thing or a group of people, and they are going to be just constantly harried by just the universe itself. But they are going to be tasked by what is called the cosmic balance in order to ensure that there is neither law nor chaos. However, in 9 times out of 10, it's going to be chaos that's going to be the bad guy. Which leads to kind of a situation that just occurred, whereupon Clockwork went, oh, so chaos versus good. No, law is not good. Law is very not good. The issue being is that the way that chaos is presented versus law, chaos has all the cool things that go on, because chaos has magic, chaos has demons, chaos has weird stuff. Law really doesn't have anything, and this is kind of unfortunate, like even within the Elric of Melnibone / Eternal Champion storyteller system, that yes, there was actually a incredibly overly complicated 90s RPG. Noodle actually has it, whereupon you can create a character who would be in this setting. And basically, to align yourself to law, you basically get a nation unto yourself. What is a Lord of Chaos get? They can get demons. They can get magic powers. They can actually get one of the Black Blades, which is to say one of the sister blades of Stormbringer and Mournblade. These incredibly intelligent, basically demon swords that can grant unnatural vitality and can basically kill anything that they touch. It's not a good idea to have them, but you can get them. So yeah. And yes, so getting back to Corum. All right, with all this in mind, all right, you have that tucked away in your little head bed.
Yes.
Okay, good, because you're gonna need it. All right, you have to understand, Elric, kind of a bad guy. All right.
Mm-hmm.
He is the descendant of an ancient. He's basically a I would say a dark elf, but he's not actually. When we say dark elf, most people nowadays will think like someone who actually is dark skinned. Elric is like painfully pale, and like even all of his art, he's just like incredibly pale. Imagine, if you will, if you're familiar with like Japanese classic art or like even modern art, anything done by Yoshitaka Miyata, that's basically the way he is, just painfully pale, painfully skinny, and yet he has this gigantic two-handed black sword with him at all times. He is patroned by Ariosh, the Lord of the Seven Darks, one of the Dukes of Hell. Okay? This is important because throughout all the Elric books, all the Elric stories, you have this incredibly powerful Chaos Lord constantly either harassing or messing with Elric. Okay? So, with that in mind, we turn to Corum. Corum is not of Melnibone. He is not one of these space elves. Kind of. He is what we say is a Vodog. Okay? The Vodog live on what is known as the 15 Planes. All right? Now, in some distant past, all right, they actually traveled around in the multiverse. But they don't anymore. They don't need to. The Nadrog, their ancient racial enemies, have not attacked them in millennia. Okay, and you have to understand they also live for about 1,000 years or so, and they don't even really like die of old age anymore. They'll just be like, "Well, I'm old, so I'm going to go to sleep now in the room of vapors," and they basically carousel themselves, self-Brazil themselves, whatever euphemism you wish to apply. All right, they are enlightened. They are cultured. They spend their days, gardening, tending to animals, contemplating nature, understanding deep thoughts. And out of this, Corum Jare Iselsi, whose name actually means Corum, Prince in the Scarlet Robe, if I remember that correctly. This is very important. They ascribe colors to themselves, actually. So this is a thing that he has. Apparently, this was a thing with all other Vodog, but he's the only one that really goes into this. And we'll kind of see that as the story goes. And so his dad comes to him, the king of Castle Irorn, says, "Corum, I have not heard from my cousins in many, many centuries. why don't you go out and see what's going on in the wider world? Go out and you can, see your cousins and come back. And Pooghym kind of parses from this that, this is not only just basically his father trying to get him out of the castle, but also like, Pooghym, it's kind of weird that, you don't have a wife yet. So you should probably get on that. And also, do some like, do some very intellectual and contemplative adventuring, and come back when you have done that. No rush or anything. The Vodog don't really rush. They don't really do that. But here's the thing: he goes out and he goes to the first castle, and nothing's there. He goes to the second castle, nothing's there. He goes to the third castle, and the entire thing is burnt to the ground, and there's just nothing but a blackened crater. He goes to the fourth castle, and he actually encounters a Nadrog there, who proceeds to plead with him to kill him because the Mobden are coming. Now, what are the Mobden? The Mobden are a race of near animals that barely live for a century. They are hairless apes who can barely even speak. They are not intelligent, according to the Vodog and the Nadrog, and they only live on a single archipelago. If the wheels in your brain are turning, you might realize what's going on here. The Mobden are actually people. They are humans. And they are so beneath, or they were so beneath the Vodog and the Nadrog, that they were basically considered like curious apes, basically. But something has happened in the 1,000 or so years since the last time that Castle Arorn has encountered a Mobden, because one of Khorrum's uncles actually had one as a pet for a while, and they're like, yeah, he only lasted like a century, and that was kind of sad, but what you gonna do? They're not really like intelligent or like really special, so But now they encounter a procession of these Mobden carrying Vodog weapons and a bunch of their knickknacks, specifically their clothes. And something snaps in Khorrum, and he proceeds to, at first he asks what's going on, and they basically call him what is a Shefano, which is supposed to be like a fiend or a devil. And after basically interrogating the last survivor, he learns that the Mobden not only have gotten much stronger, they actually have a new patron, or a series of patrons, the Sword Rulers. What are the Sword Rulers? Well, they're apparently incredibly powerful gods. They are aligned with chaos, and they actually have great supernatural control basically over the 15 realms now. And to that effect, a lot of the supernatural senses of the Vodog are being dulled, because the Vodog actually are aligned inherently with law. So at that point, he goes to the last of the castles that he was supposed to, and he gets captured by the Count of Glai, who was the leader of the Mobden who were raiding these Vodog cities. And this didn't occur to me. I don't know. Should we add a content warning for this one or not, Professor?
I'll fix it up as necessary after the fact. You just do what you feel is best.
Okay. Because basically he gets tortured. Not just basically, he gets tortured. He is tied to a table, and they're basically going to take him apart piece by piece. The issue being is that they only go about halfway. He loses his left hand and his right eye, and basically gets just the snot beaten out of him in so doing. If it was not for a creature called the Brown Man who took pity on him, then he would have been sacrificed to what they later called the dog. Which I'm not sure if the dog is supposed to be a one of the Beast Lords. Basically, there are like archetypal animal beings in Elric who are called the Beast Lords.
The dog is not one of the Beast Lords. The dog is one of the bear and the dog are the quote gods of the Mabden in the 15 realms, and they are basically subsidiary lesser gods of the sword rulers.
Yeah, there's a few of them. Like they actually go to the good the quote unquote good Mobden who are under King Omdel, who actually has a kind of a quote unquote national god who is Lord Urle. But it turns out that Lord Urle actually is aligned with Lord Ariosh, the Knight of the Swords, as well. Oops, what you gonna do? Am I right? So, anyways, so he is taken by the Brown Man. He's no longer going to be sacrificed to the dog, but now he can't go to any of the other planes like he could before. He doesn't have any other senses. He's down a hand. He's down an eye. So he's taken, and he is taken by this strange creature called the Brown Man. Basically, imagine, if you will, a plane-shifting Sasquatch, and that basically is the Brown Man. Honestly, the Brown Man is a very sad character because he is desperately trying to help Corum, and he really can't do much to begin with because he, too, is a creature of law, and law is just so diminished in this place that there's just not much that any law-aligned creature can do. But the Brown Man tells him, don't worry, I just need to get you to this one place, and at which point my master will send help. This kind of happens. His master is kind of not very helpful, unfortunately. His master is a creature called the Giant of Lar, who is this strange like glowing being that like basically Corum can't really make the aspect out of. But he apparently did actually shield them, and he brings them to Castle Moidel. Moidel, which is this used to be an archipelago looking over a forest, but the ocean basically has entirely swept it over and is now just a very small island that basically at low tide there's a small sandbar that connects it to the mainland. And there is Margarvine Ralina, who is a Mabden whose husband died in a shipwreck earlier, and she is basically just holding the fort, literally holding the fort down with just a handful of soldiers against the ravaging pony tribes who are beholden to the bear and the dog. And once you know it, the pony tribes actually were the guys under Count Glai, who actually are part of a greater confederation under a king, but that doesn't really like factor in till the Queen of Swords, so I'm not really going to go into that now. Anyways, they get attacked. The tribes start attacking them, and there's not really a whole lot that they can do. They don't have that many troops, and the fortifications are literally being eroded by the ocean. So Rolina, the Margravine, goes, "Don't worry, my husband was a sorcerer. I'll look at his notes." And so she starts doing an enchantment, and she summons she makes a pact with a creature known as Shul. Okay? This is not a good thing to do, by the way. Basically, summoning anything, really anything in the multiverse is a bad idea, because usually it involves a great deal of sacrifice, and a lot of these creatures are not your friend. This is not Pokemon, where it's like, oh, I'm going to be your best friend. No, this is Shin Megami Tensei. But what happens is that it summons a ship that actually Relina and the soldiers know, because it's actually the ship of her dead husband, rised up of the depths. And it not only terrifies the pony tribe, it basically spooks them, but also demands that Relina go with them. Courum's not entirely cool with this. You know, being a creature of law, he's not really down with sorcery. Sorcery is chaos workings. So he's like, okay, fine, you can take Relina, but I'm going to go with you. And the dead Margrave's like, well, fine, because our master wants you anyway. So they go back to the island of Shul. Shul, it turns out, is actually, I don't know, how would you describe Shul there, Noodle? Is he a Chaos Lord? Is he a wizard? Is he both?
He is a wizard who believes himself to be a Chaos Lord and is trying to ascend to become a Chaos Lord. But it is later discovered that basically, like, he's like, oh yeah, I am Ariosh's rival in the realms, and then when the Sword Rulers inevitably at the end of the series get cut off from the 15 realms, Shul loses all of his powers because, well, turns out he was just stealing power from Ariosh because Ariosh thought the whole thing was hilarious and just was trying to do something to entertain himself.
Yes. I suppose at this point I should kind of lay things out. So there is the ever-changing 8. Those are the Chaos Lords, and there's the unchanging 9. So there is precedent actually for other beings to steal basically seats at the, round table of power, so to speak. It would be possible for him to do that. In fact, there's actually about 16 named characters of the quote-unquote ever-changing 8. So it would be doable. But yeah, he's kind of, thinking a little bit too big for his britches. The thing that's important with him, though, is he actually offers our boy Corum an opportunity. He goes, yes, you see, basically there's a Lord of Chaos, the Knight of Swords, who controls these 5 planes that we're currently active on. However, if you team up with me, I can give you the power that you need in order to kill the Knight of Swords, to steal his heart and banish him from these 5 planes. Corum's not super thrilled with this. He doesn't like Shul, especially later on when it turns out that Relina's husband, who had been resurrected from the depths, basically was just being puppeted by Shul. But he agrees because he is at this point so consumed with guilt over the fact that his family is now dead. He returns to Castle Erorn. He found his entire family basically ritualistically slaughtered. And when he was captured, the Count explained in gleeful detail how he killed all of his family and his friends. And so Corum is just consumed by vengeance at this point, which is Shul actually makes a point out of this. Like, you're a Vodog. Vodog don't do things like revenge. This is a very mob den thing to do. And he goes, well, you guys taught me. So what you going to do? But anyways, at that point, he is then proceeded to be knocked out. He wakes up a couple days later, and wouldn't you know it, he has a new eye and a new hand. Except that he looks at the eye, and this is not a regular Vodog eye. It's not a Mabden eye either. It looks like a insectile jeweled eye. And the hand looks like an armored, six-fingered, mailed fist. This is the hand of what we later learn are one of the lost gods, which is important because they're different than the dead gods, and they're not the chaos gods or the gods of law. They're something else. It's the I want to say the hand of Rin and the eye of Quill. I want to say.
I think so. Yes.
Yes, but I mean, they're basically Rin and Quill are two ancient deities, which Shul basically points out were incredibly powerful, but got into a conflict at some point, and they both lost these limbs or body parts. And so they actually have incredible power and would allow Pooghym the ability to actually not only enter into the Knight of Swords territory, but potentially harm him. So, with that in mind, Shul actually utilizes some of his magical powers and transports Pooghym to the palace of the Knight of Swords. Not exactly the like actual building, more like the vicinity, the plain, because he basically goes into just an endless, like, eternal fire. The entire landscape of this place is just completely insane. The sun is just hanging in the middle of the sky. Time basically has stopped. And he actually encounters other Vodog who are basically in like a Mad Max style, just a gang going around like stealing and murdering. And he utilizes a new skill that he has, whereupon he can actually, if he focuses his eye, he can look into not just the plains around him, because Vada can actually look not just in sea, but they can look in nearby plains. With the eye, he can actually look into limbo, the place between planes. And with the hand, he can actually grasp and interact with these creatures. And here's the thing. Those creatures, if he offers them prizes, they will come out of limbo and basically kill whatever is there. And then he can have those as basically in reserve. If this sounds familiar, once again, you have to understand, Michael Moorcock has basically been ripped off by everybody. All right? But with this also, he is able to actually overcome a lot of the demonic guards around the Knight of Swords palace and enters into it, whereupon he sees this just horrifying castle-sized, like, fat monster person just having this feast, just eating. And there's small little Mabden just going around scrubbing and like eating pieces of this giant thing. And they're being squished, and then other little Mabden are like coming and like trying to eat the squished Mabden and then trying to eat. It's all very gross and very, and just Pooghym is just kind of taken aback by the entire thing until this giant Knight of Swords actually notices what's going on and transforms from that into this very attractive youth, which is basically the way that he is presented, because he introduces himself at this point. Up to this point, he's basically been presented just as, oh yes, I'm just, it's just the Knight of Swords, just the Knight of Swords. He's the least of the sword rulers. Now he presents himself as Ariosh. And the longtime fans of Michael Moorcock will go, oh crap, this is Elric's boss. This is a big deal. They basically had to end the world to kill this guy, and this is like the first major enemy that Pooghym has to deal with. And Ariosh basically just shows him around. He actually is like kind of amused that Pooghym is even here to begin with. He once again points out that, Vada don't really do vengeance. Why are you even here? And so he's not even really threatened by Pooghym, even with the hand in the eye. However, when Pooghym actually sees where his heart is, things get a little bit different, because unlike all the other intruders up to this point, Pooghym is not actually taken by the traps around it. You see, Pooghym is not the first person to try and take Ariosh's heart. Shul has tried this countless other times. There's actually a small army of people that were basically frozen in place right in front of Ariosh's heart by the myriad traps that are around it. But when Pooghym actually takes the heart, everything's undone, and Ariosh is like, oh no, this guy is actually legit. He could actually be a threat to me. And so he goes from just being very nonchalant and very just, oh, whatever, like, oh, I need to kill you. I need to send you to Brazil, like, now.
You're missing a step there. You're missing a step. It's that the whole thing with Shul sending these people was part of Ariosh's plan, because the sword rulers, when they conquered the 15 planes, made a deal with each other that they would take 5 of their body parts and put them into these different realms, and whatever realm had these body parts in, they would be the rulers of. And so Ariosh was using Shul to try and get somebody to get his heart out of the place where it was bound by the other sword rulers, so then he could put it back in and be like, well, my heart's, and go wherever he wants and be like, well, I'm in charge here now because my heart's here, and that was the deal that we had.
Yes, but, I mean, this is also a combination of the fact that Ariosh was basically treating us like a giant game.
Yes.
But yes, I mean, you're absolutely right. And honestly, like, that type of rules effery is like entirely in line just the way the Chaos Lords are.
They are the Lords of Chaos, that's their job is fucking with the rules, man. Fucking with the rules.
Something that I was kind of musing to while I was reading this at all, and I don't know, I never really got a yes or a no, so I'm just kind of, gonna posit this to you, Noodle. The sword rulers, they all have giant black swords, right?
Yes.
Are those theoretically some of the other sister swords to Stormbringer and Mournblade? Are they actually black blades? Or are they just, cool black swords to denote that these are big, scary people?
I think they're just cool black swords. I think they would be a lot more... I think the sword rulers would be a lot more terrifying than they are if they actually had black swords.
Yeah. And you have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, this is actually not only is this a thing, but one of the last abilities that Elric gets in Stormbringer, the last basic story in his overarching cycle, so to speak, that ends in the world basically ending, is he gets the ability to summon all the sister swords of his sword, Stormbringer. And it's just a myriad of similar black swords. And it's learned that basically for every time the Eternal Champion shows up, they are armed with a quote-unquote black sword, some kind of terrifying weapon. It doesn't need to actually be a sword. Like Jerry Cornelius actually has a gun. And I want to say Hawkmoon's is actually just the evil eye that's in his forehead, or is it the Sword of Dawn? I forget.
No, it's the black gem.
Okay, right.
Yeah, his black sword is the black gem because it feasts on the essence of other people around him. Pooghym actually doesn't get his black sword until book 5 out of 6.
Yes. Yes, he loses the eye in the hand. Actually, later on, Noodle can talk about that because that actually happens in King of Swords, and that's not one that I've read, unfortunately. So at this point, Ariosh is, not pleased with this entire thing. He's actually like, wait a second, this is not a fun game. This is not a fun game at all. And he tries to not only, he basically returns to a giant form, tries to simultaneously kill / devour Pooghym because Pooghym actually has his heart now. And he's like, it's all right. I'll just absorb you and the heart all in one go. Nom, 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 nom. He doesn't get a chance because the hand, which at this point has basically occasionally just done things on its own accord, he has the heart in his hand. He just proceeds to just smash it just with his gross 6-fingered hand. He's just like, at which point, as he's, just kind of dying, dissipating, he's just like, Ario, just proceeds to just, go, you, Pooghym, have earned the eternal enmity of the Lords of Chaos, and my siblings, the other sword rulers, will find you and hunt you down, and your soul will suffer for all eternity. And that's basically how the first book ends. Just, yeah, you won, but watch your back. Oh, Shul gets killed too, by the way. They go back, and he is just a withered, wizened husk rather than the weird mystical creature that he was before. And he gets devoured by his garden of like Triffid creature weird roses that all have like weirdly human lips and teeth. Don't ask me. It's he was a wizard of chaos. Creepy stuff is just what he does. So yeah, that's the first book. The second book actually is really cool too, the Queen of Swords, because it focuses not on Ariosh but on Zombarg, and Zombarg is important mainly because she's one of the few Chaos Lords that are actually female. She showed up in Stormbringer at the very end, and she actually was presented there as a Queen of Swords too, even though she was also presented as Ariosh's brother. Don't ask. I can't really explain or square that circle. It's chaos. They don't have to explain things. But two things basically really stood out to me in this one. It was the fact that it opens with the Count of Glai, the overarching kind of bad guy. Yeah, they didn't forget about him. He actually goes to his boss, the king of the pony tribes, and goes, hey, yeah, so the Shafano, we didn't kill them all. There's still one out there, and he is actually gathering strength. And oh, by the way, this is important because he killed basically our boss's boss. So we're going to have to do something about that. So the king, it's like, you're right, we should summon the dog and the bear. And there's actually this really cool / kind of, it's basically straight out of Berserk style, like just sacrifice they do, where they take a bunch of very beautiful, very, they go out of their way to describe that, yes, they're very beautiful, very comely peasants. Gather them into a wicker structure, set the wicker structure alight, and wait for the fumes to reach heaven, whereupon this gigantic wolf and bear proceed to sit down and start just eating. And at which point, then the king is like, "Hey, what do you want us to do?" At which point, these chaos lords proceed to go, "Don't worry. Zombarg already knows. She'll send a guy." And that's all they kind of say at this point. I had already kind of been spoiled up to this point because I had actually read The Sword and the Rose, which was in a later Elric story that actually involves the quote-unquote guy that they're going to send. And so I was kind of already going, oh, rub my chin. Curious. But, yes. Should I explain who that is now, Noodle, or should we wait? What do you think? He's kind of a big deal.
Yes, you should. Or I can explain it now if you want to.
Yeah, you know what? Why don't you explain it? They probably are like, oh, God, Isaka, you talk too much. So,
okay.
Go ahead.
So this guy, whom the dog and the bear send, or, the sword rulers send at the behest of this guy, he is called Prince Gaynor the Damned. He is, or he was, at one point, one of the Eternal Champions. So he was an incarnation of that, of Pooghym and Elric and Ericose and Pooghym and all these guys. But he basically decided, fuck the eternal balance, fuck this shit. I am going to team up with Chaos in order so that Chaos can finally win this eternal war, and then the eternal war can be over, and I can rest because, dear God, I have been fighting and this war across all universes for all time, forever. I'm tired and I want to rest. And so because of that, the force of the balance, which is this non-personified deific force that essentially rules over law and chaos, cursed him to basically become, instead of the eternal champion, he is the eternal nemesis. He is the nemesis to champions. And he's just like always going to lose. He is like the most badass motherfucker in the room, but he is always going to lose. And he's like, I just want to die. And Balance is like, fuck you, you can't die.
Wait, you just described Vegeta by way of Black War Greymon.
Yes, except that imagine like Vegeta by Black War Greymon, except he is actually stupendously powerful, and he basically gets foisted on his own petard. Like, Elric in The Swords and Roses actually like destroys the entire continent that he's on. And he later on just ambles by, and Elric's like, "You're supposed to be dead," and Gaynor's like, "God, I wish." But that's not gonna work on me, bro. I'm sorry.
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, Prince Gaynor. He's back. He's here now, and he's like, "Yep, all right, time for me to fuck up Pooghym." And it's like, which is a real shame because I really like that dude. He's really chill, total dude, bro. But you know what? Job is a job.
Mm-hmm. And it's really funny too when the two of them interact because Pooghym is like, "Prince Gaynor, can I not ask you to be chivalrous?" And Gaynor's like, "I don't have any chivalry." It's like, "Can I not ask you for a one-on-one duel?" And Gaynor's like, "Why would I do that? if I did that, I would be betraying Lady Zombarg, and she would punish me. And I really don't want to do that. I really don't dislike you, Corum, but
And
I don't want to get...
And Corum's like, well, maybe I'll be able to kill you. And Gaenor's like, yeah, I wish, but, I'm not rolling the dice on that one.
But then he proceeds to try and get close to the guy with, the god hand, the literal actual god hand. And that goes about as well as it inevitably will go for anyone who is the designated jobber. But,
And, oh, yes, and one important thing about Gaenor is he's always wearing, he's wearing full plate armor and a bucket helm and an 8-pointed star of chaos on his surcoat. He is basically evil Solaire.
I was going to say, do you think that FromSoft actually did that intentionally? That it's actually Solaire supposed to be Prince Gaenor?
I don't know. They do reference an awful lot of that sort of stuff, so I wouldn't put it past them. But
yeah,
anyway, Prince Gaenor,
but
he's here.
Yeah, he's here, and he's threatening King Amdal, who is the basically the good king. And oh, by the way, he actually has the one temple to Lord Arked, the last Lord of Law, who, oh, by the way, the giant Alar that we mentioned earlier? Guess who he is? He's Lord Arked. He actually is the one who, has been trying to help Corum this whole time. But, wouldn't you know it, Law is weak now, guys, and, I need to gather my power. And, yeah, so you're not going to do anything. I'm going to get good news. I'm going to send you to the plane where Zombarg is. She will never expect you to be there, Corum. Don't worry. You can go there. And, okay, how are we going to get... How are we going to get back? Don't worry. You'll figure something out. I promise you. And so he goes there, and wouldn't you believe it, Zombarg, the Queen of Swords, her home plane, the plane that she calls home, is actually even freakier and weirder than the current plane or even the plane that Ariosh had. Her younger, not younger, but, her lesser brother. And, for instance, they have to travel across what is called the Lake of Voices, where they're just constantly assaulted by disembodied voices telling them to kill themselves. And they
to Brazil.
Yes, they have to Brazil themselves. Except that the leader, the orchestrator of the voices, is like, wow, don't you just want to jump into the water? Don't you just want to go to Brazil? I hear it's wonderful this time of year. And they're like, no, leave us alone. And they're like, no, you really want to go to Brazil.
I don't want to go to Brazil. I burn easily.
And so, yeah, at which point they trick the orchestrator of the voices to tell the other voices to shut up. At which point he's like, now you did it. You made me lose all my souls. Curse you, you guys. And this water sprite, just random minor demon that had been harassing them this entire chapter, just goes away to sulk. And you're just left wondering, it's like, wow, this entire plane is just really messed up if just minor demons are this much of a big deal. Also, by the way, they encounter this guy. He's the king without a country, because he's just basically this crazy old guy on this ancient horse who has been there for thousands of years trying to reconquer his country. And he won't die because Zombarg thinks it's funny to just keep messing with him.
if you're sensing a common theme here, that, the Chaos God's worst enemy is themselves, yeah, Warhammer stole that too.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah. Okay, I'm just gonna say it right now. After a lot of trials and tribulations, they actually encounter another Vodog city. Turns out that the Vodog, being creatures of law, actually have powers. The magic power. All right, you guys all sitting down? The power of science.
Dun,
They
dun,
have the
dun.
power of technology.
And so this city is a gigantic floating golden pyramid, and all the Vodog have laser guns. Yeah,
Yes,
sci-fi.
actually, yes, actually, because they actually bring a couple of these laser guns with them in a what they call a steel skyship to planescape back to the original place, at which point the pilot proceeds to hand Corum what is called a long silver cylinder with a handle and a small pin. And he goes, all right, now squeeze the pin and point it at whatever you want to attack. And so he just is facing the king of the pony tribes, and just points this thing at it and pulls the pin, at which point this beam of light strikes the guy and he just dies instantly. And Corum is like, wow, why don't we use this against Zombarg? And the pilot goes, it doesn't work like that, bro.
It doesn't. It's not just an instant delete button, guy. It's not going to work.
We can't just, technology away pure chaos. That's not how this works. But it'll kill pretty much anything else.
We can't 360 no-scope chaos gods, dude. Come on.
Yes, actually, that's important to know because in the Blood series with Magic Chaos Chaos starships, the Great Ether Fleet really probably would have wanted to, like, God, I wish I could use technology to put this chaos stuff away. But, as Vodog pointed out, it doesn't work like that. And so, while they're doing all this, they actually encounter another champion. Actually, another very important person. This is going back a ways. I'm sorry. They actually encounter just this random other guy who's actually really important, and I feel really bad that I am only now just kind of pointing this guy out because he actually is really, really funny and really interesting.
He's my favorite.
Jaria Cone L. So, you know how there's the Eternal Champion and the Nemesis to Champions, everyone?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Yeah. Okay. This guy is the companion to champions. And not only, and that means he is the eternal sidekick. And unlike everyone else, he actually has memories of his earlier incarnations. He actually is basically the eternal exposition guy. He knows all sorts of neat stuff. And on top of that, he has a cool flying cat named Whiskers. And that's how they actually learned about the sacrifice to the bear and the dog. And they're like, oh yeah, by the way, there's a guy coming. That's how Corum and everybody else knows about this. Which is what really ultimately prompts them to start doing things and actually go to Zombarg's dimension in the first place.
And it's really funny because Jaria Conel, yeah, he remembers all of his incarnations, and he's just really chill about this internal conflict thing. There is a one of the Eternal Champions, Ericose, or one of the two Ericoses, because there are two Ericoses, that remembers everything. And he's just the most depressed of all of the Eternal Champions. And then there's just Jaria Conel, who's just chilling and just vibing about the thing. It's hilarious.
Yes, it's really funny because one of them, John Dakar, literally is just this Victorian gentleman who is then suddenly tasked to be this cosmic wizard, and he's just he is really the most depressed. He's like, I just want to go back home. And they're like, sorry, John, you have to fight cosmic wizards now. He's like, I just want to go back home and drink tea. It's like, here's your black sword. It's like, no, I just want tea. Erakose is suffering. I really wish that he actually was on Sailors of the Seas of Fate, but I don't think he was.
He was.
I want to say Eric.
Eric
Oh, was he?
Eric on one of the Sailors on the Seas of Fate, yeah.
I know that Erakose was, but I don't think John Dakar was.
Oh, no, John Dakar. No, John Dakar wasn't. It was the three for the Sailors on the Seas of Fate were the Erakose who remembers everything, Pooghym, and Elric.
Yes, and I want to say this was second cycle Pooghym because he didn't have the hand in the eye anymore.
No, this was first cycle Pooghym. That Sailors on the Seas of Fate takes part in book 3.
Oh.
Yep. Uh-huh.
Well, okay. And this is, okay, so anyways, the entire reason why I bring this guy up now is because basically they're on this giant golden pyramid, right? And they're actually literally being attacked by Zombarg. Zombarg in her own dimension basically has complete dominion, and she can just do whatever. And she is actually literally about to flatten them, except that Jaria Conel basically pulls out the, okay guys, I'm about to do what's called a pro gamer move, and that's called bluffing my butt off. And he's like, oh, hey, Zombarg. He's like, oh, what are you, what's the big deal, companion to champions? What are you trying to do? Well, don't you know who this guy is? What, he's just a Vodog. There's only a handful of them. They're not big deal. It's like, no, you don't understand. This is the guy that killed your brother. And she's like, oh. She takes this poorly, shall we say. She takes this extremely poorly. And kind of just ultimately leads to what Noodle said earlier about, Chaos being its own worst enemy. At any point throughout this, Zombarg could have just let her minions deal with them, and they would have probably died. In fact, actually, there was a point leading up to this, whereupon Pooghym had tried to take out one of Zombarg's immediate lieutenants, a creature that was called her pet, known as the Gonk. G-H-A-N-G, Gong. Basically this giant, simultaneous crab / flying shark thing. But in so doing, he had lost all of his other, limbo creatures. He basically did not have any of them to that point. It later was revealed that they had actually killed the Gong, but he didn't know that. I guess he just didn't decide to look into limbo. Shrug. I mean, to be fair, it also said that he doesn't really like looking into limbo because it made him extremely unnerved. And I suppose, looking into a space outside of space itself probably is not the most pleasant experience, so I'll forgive him that one. But, yeah. Zombarg could have probably just won if she had just, let her lieutenants take care of things. But, basically, she is like, okay, so I know that you're here, but I'm gonna, consider how to kill you. Then they planescape back to their original dimension, at which point she goes, wait a second, Gaynor can see him. That's where he is now. I'm going to immediately just go to this other dimension. Here's the problem, though. We have established earlier that the Chaos Lords can not just go from place to place. There are rules about such things. And the cosmic balance basically is like, I'm sorry, Zombarg, but you're fired. You're fired.
You
Get
broke the rules.
You broke the rules. You're fired. Get out of here. go harass Elric or something. And so she is defeated just because of her own actions, not because of anything she actually did or anything that Pooghym did. This was just all on her. So, and when pressed about it, Pooghym asks, and Jarya is like, "Hey, did you know that she was going to do that?" And his response is just, I was hoping that she'd do something stupid. Would actually come after us the way she did, apart from the fact that, she's crazy. That's about it. So, yeah. And that's basically where book 2 ends. And that is the extent of my knowledge of Pooghym, really. So I'm going to have to defer to Noodle on this one because he actually has read book 3. And I know of Mabdalode, the king of the swords. He actually does show up in Stormbringer. The problem being is at the end of Stormbringer is basically Elric just soloing a bunch of Chaos Lords. And they mention them and they bring up kind of like a one-sentence description of what they are. And it's like, and then Stormbringer killed them. And then there's another guy and Stormbringer kills them too. It's like, okay. So you don't really get a sense of who they are or really that they're characters. It's just, these are the last bits of chaos in this world. But, yeah, so take it away, Noodle.
Okay, so book 3 begins in that, Pooghym has started living in the City of Light, the Varag city that has planescaped to his home dimension. And he's having a grand old time, and everything's going good, and everything's kind of chill for a few years. But then, all of a sudden, everybody just starts being complete assholes to each other and getting really, really, really violent. Just like with everybody all the time, like everyone is on a hair trigger temper. And this causes Elric and Jarya Conel, who disappeared at the end of book 2. After book 2, he's just like, oh, well, you don't need me right now. I'm going to go off. You'll see me again in the future. And so Jarya Conel shows back up. And I don't think
Elric is there.
Not Elric.
I mean, at least not initially. You said Elric.
Oh, Pooghym. Sorry. So Pooghym, yes, is living in the city of the Varag. And then Jarya Conel shows up and is like, and he's like, there's something weird going on. Oh no, there's something weird going on. And Jarya Conel, just being the dude who knows things, is like, well, maybe we should check out the Nedraz Islands and see what's going on there, because that shit's been suspiciously quiet. So they go there and they discover the last Nedra, who had been enslaved by the Mabden and was like just really, really angry with everything. And so he, at the behest of the gods of chaos, had cast the Plague of Discontent, and was basically this psychic plague upon the entire plane that would cause everybody to just get super fucking mad about anything and everything. And just be like, yep, I'm going to finally win the millennia-long war with the Varag by causing them to kill themselves, lol. Haha, I'm going to transport all of you to Brazil.
Curse you, Nedrock. You're the depths of your depravity. You can't just, tell the Mabden where my people are or, how the planes work. You have to, use your discount tent abilities.
Well, see, the thing is the Mabden did know where his people were, and the city of the Varag was unassailable because, when you're Bronze Age tribesmen, how are you going to fight people who have, airplanes and laser guns?
Yeah, but the thing was, though, is that they used the Nedrog as basically bloodhounds to find the other Vadak places that they established that in the first couple books.
Yeah, they did. So they're like, well, how can we friggin' stop this? And they realize that the only way that they can stop this is essentially by cutting all of Chaos off from the 15 planes, which, they have no idea how to do this. And they end up going on another planescaping adventure, and they're like, well, how are we going to do this? How are we going to stop this? Well, we need some way to defeat Malborode, the King of Swords, Malborode the Faceless. And we're like, well, we have no idea how we can actually do this, but there's one place that we might be able to find out, and that place is Tanalorn, the City of Heroes, which is the one place that exists in every plane of the cosmos and is like the one place that is safe from the conflict between law and chaos because it is ruled by the balance.
It's also important to know that this entire thing, you have to understand that Moorcock started writing in the 1960s. Tanalorn actually was basically a Anglo-sphere Woodstock festival. So basically he's like, yes, the ancient city of peace, Woodstock, where they play Grateful Dead every day and there's always eternal and plentiful weed. I mean, that's basically what it is. If you look at the Land Down Under by the Men at Work, they actually have a sign where it's Tanalorn or bust. But this is not the only story that Tanalorn shows up in either. Like Elric occasionally goes there. Rakir the Red Archer, who was like another hero from the Young Kingdoms, actually had an entire trilogy of stories about him trying to save Tanalorn from basically chaos fentanyl zombies coming from space Detroit, city of beggars. That was a good series of stories too.
That was a very good series of stories. But
I'm sorry. It's all interconnected. So
So this is so over the course of them planescaping and trying to reach Tanalorn, because while Tanalorn exists in every reality, it doesn't exist in every reality at the same time, and so to get there, it can be kind of a trip and kind of weird. And so they have to do a bunch of planescaping to reach Tanalorn. And over the course of that, they end up separated, and Pooghym ends up being drowning in the seas of fate. And then he gets picked up by this very strange ship. And on this ship, there are two other passengers who are also found by this ship drowning in the seas of fate. And they are Elric and Ericose. And they are other incarnations of the Eternal Champion. And Pooghym is like really, really, really weirded out by this because he had heard from Jaria Konel what the whole thing was, and he was just like, yeah, sure, this is stuff that's going on. And now it's, I don't, sure, Jaria Konel, I believe you. Kind of weird. This guy's kind of crazy. And now he's like face to face with this, and he like knows in his soul that is actually like the truth, that he is doomed to fight for all eternity. especially since Arakose is the Jarya Konel of his group and knows everything and is like, I remember being you, Corum. And it really creeps Elric and Corum out.
Which is funny because Elric up to this point had actually encountered Corum already before, but
yeah,
he
encountered. The hilarious thing is that, you know, time, when you Planescape, time doesn't really go the right thing. So Elric had already encountered Corum. Corum had not already encountered Elric. The Corum that Elric had encountered was Corum from the second trilogy.
Oh, from the Vanishing Tower? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Oops. I mean, I suppose we should also point out that, you know, in the grand scheme of the quote-unquote timeline of the Eternal Champion, the very first Eternal Champion is actually the very last human being in existence in all of the multiverse. So, yeah, time is, as the Doctor says, a little bit fucky-wucky.
Timey-wimey gobbledygook.
Yes.
But yeah, so they go on a little adventure all together. And after the adventure is done, the captain drops Corum off at Tanalorn, where conveniently Jarya Konel is already there because Jarya Konel gonna Jarya Konel.
That's the Sailors on the Seas of Fate, by the way. It's a good story.
It's a very good.
Yeah, it's basically where like the modern conception of planescaping comes from. And it sadly does not actually involve starfish wizards trying to devour reality like I thought for many years. It's actually weirder than that. Sorry.
Quick, Elric, 2 starfish are gonna eat all reality. We gotta go on an adventure.
Hold on, we gotta fuse minds in order to stab them to death forever.
Yep. Oh, if only things would be so cool. But when they're in Tanalorn, they encounter this strange little statue right in the middle of Tanalorn. And they're all like, ooh, what the weird thing is that? And this statue, it's got 4 arms and 4 legs. And it's all like covered in gems and shit. That's kind of weird. And then the statue turns its head at them and like grins at them. And Corum notices the statue is missing its hand.
Uh-oh.
And then it's like, yeah, oh hey, there's my hand. Can I have that back? And Corum's like, oh shit, you're Quill. And the Quill's like, yep, that's me. I'm one of the 2 old gods. Yeah, I want my hand back now. Please give it to me. And yeah.
I'm sorry. It's just to say this is different than the dead gods, by the way, which are an entirely different set of gods that Elric encountered. It's yeah.
The dead gods are essentially former incarnations of. They're the former gods of law and chaos. Those are what the dead gods were. They were the previous cycles of law, the gods of law and chaos. Ren and Quill, they are something else altogether. They transcend law, chaos, and even the balance. And so Quill explains that the 2 of them knew no law but the law of their brotherhood towards each other. They knew no law but their own bonds. And so when they fought and they injured each other, their punishment that they had for that, they had to levy upon each other. And so Quill was bound to Tanalorn, and Rin was forced to fish all of the seas to try and find his eye. But he could never find his eye because the eye and the hand were always together, and he couldn't see them while they were together. But Quill says that they've suffered enough. They've been punished enough for this transgression. It is time for them to end this. And Corum's like, well, can I make a deal with you? I'll give you your hand back if you agree to kill Malvarode for us. And Jariakona's like, this is a stupid deal. And Quill's like, yeah, sure, kid, I'll do that for you. And Jariakona's like, no, don't do it. And Corum's like,
you should have listened. You should have listened to the Companion of Champions, Corum.
And so Corum takes the deal and gives the hand back to Quill. And Quill's like, all right, we're going to go to Malvarode's domain. And they just planescape immediately to Malvarode's domain. And Jariakona's like, dude, he doesn't have to listen to your promise. He's not bound to your promise. But then Corum basically, like, I wouldn't say guilt trips him, but basically, like, they have a massive superiority complex, Rin and Quill. And they're like, we're so much better, we're so much greater than the gods of chaos and law. And so Quill's like, well, I don't have to do this. I am not bound. I can just, do whatever I want. I don't have to do this thing that I made the deal with you for. And Corum's all like, well, yeah, but if you did that, then you would be treating me exactly like the gods of, law and chaos do. And isn't the great Quill better than that? And Quill's like, see, the thing is, I know you're playing me, but you're right. And
yeah,
so
you have to. You have to understand that Corum up to this point basically had a extreme distaste for gods, even to the point of to Arkin's face, just as like, I hate all gods, and Arkin's like, yeah, you'd be in the right to do that.
Yeah, big mood.
So yeah, he's just in the middle of being stronger than Arkin, and he's like, come on, and he's like, fine.
And so Quill takes them all to Malvarode's domain. And Malvarode's like, ha, Corum, you've come here. I'll totally kill you. And Quill's like, these are the gods of chaos. Y'all suck. And Malvarode's like, who is this pathetic weakling? And sicks a bunch of his lesser minions on Quill. And Quill just, like, deletes them from existence. And Malvarode's like, oh shit. It's Quill. And summons all of the legions of chaos. And Quill's like, all right, I got this. Corum, I'm going to teleport you back to your dimension. Throw your eye in the water and Rin will find it. Yeah, that's about it. And he teleports him back. And then so Corum does that. He tosses the Eye of Rin into the seas of his home plane, and it is picked up by a mysterious entity that they'd run into a bunch of times called the Fisher, which was this, like, indistinct giant with a single glowing eye that was just, like, had a giant net and was constantly casting it into the sea. And so that picks him up, and then it's like, oh shit, this is Rin. And then Corum kills the Count without his hand or his eye. He gets into a fight with him on the Nedra Peninsula. And then that breaks the plague of dissentment. And so it's like, okay, yay, everybody won. And then Quill shows up and he's like, oh hey, I killed all of chaos like we agreed. And Corum's like, cool, Lord Arkin and the gods of law are gonna totally thank you for that. And Quill's like, see, the thing about that is I decided to just go and kill them too. So yeah, you guys, hey, congratulations. You guys are no longer bound by gods. Me and my bro are going to peace out. Ciao. And yeah, that's basically how the first trilogy ends. Just like all of the gods are banished from the 15 planes. Good has won. It's one of the few happy endings of a sort in the Moorcock universes. And of course, it can't fucking last because Pooghym has a second trilogy.
And it's even crazier in the first one. Yes.
It would take even longer to go into like the second trilogy than the first, but essentially to boil it all down, the first trilogy is very influenced by Celtic folklore. The second trilogy doubles down on that. It is super, super, super Celtic folklore. Pooghym, it starts with Pooghym basically living in his old castle. Like all of his wife, because he ended up marrying Rolana, and all of his family and friends are dead. Except for Jarya Konel, who's just like, well, there's no gods here, so I'm going to peace out now and go to another place because, there's no purpose for me living here. And he's just kind of like, what's even the point anymore? And he starts hearing these visions, start having these dreams of people calling him. These weird people in a mound calling him. And then Jarya Konel shows up. And Jarya Konel is like, well, if you don't know what to do, maybe you should answer the people in these dreams. And it's like the people in the dreams, they're apparently people from the far future who are trying to summon him to save them from evil demons besetting their lands, which are the Fomorians. And he decides to answer their summons and get summoned to his far future, where he is Crom Craw, the Lord of the Mound, and also the Prince with the Silver Hand, because he made himself a new prosthetic silver hand. And
he has to fight Prince Baelor.
And he has to fight Prince Baelor, and also Gaynor is there, being a total douchebag, and also kind of a dude bro. And
that really is just kind of Gaynor's entire thing. He shows up and he's just like, man, in any other situation you'd be really cool. And honestly, that's like the thing I really like about Swords and Roses, is that he just shows up and he's like, hey, and Elric's like, hey, and they're both, I'm sorry, I really like you, but I'm gonna have to kill you. It's like, I wish this were the first time that, this had happened to me. Oh.
Yeah, so basically it's like, oh, the Vodog are actually elves and are like the She of Celtic mythology, and there are 9-foot-tall dwarves, which is explained by the fact that they're, 36-foot-tall giants, so the dwarves are dwarfed by comparison to their giant cousins. And yeah, it's really trippy. Pooghym finally gets his black sword in book 2 of the second trilogy. So, book 5 of Pooghym, he gets his black sword. And yeah, he would have had another happy ending, except the anthropomorphic personification of the balance that showed up at the very end of book 6 and was like, you don't belong in this world, man, you gotta go. And he's like, no, I want to stay. And he's like, no, man, you gotta go or else bad shit's gonna go down. He's like, I'm gonna stay. and then because he chooses to say he gets a bad end, it's like, poor Pooghym. You should have listened.
Lol, said Cosmic Balance. Lamau, even.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem, is that, basically there are no happy endings, which is really unfortunate. But at the same time, though,
Hawkmoon has a happy ending.
I mean, does he really, though? I mean, Europe's basically burned to the ground, and he destroyed, Great Britain. Although he did kill the Beatles, so...
He killed the Beatles, which, yes, Hawkmoon is a whole nother thing, but, yeah, Hawkmoon takes place in the future of our universe, and Great Britain is conquering the whole universe again using their magical science, and the Beatles are their war gods.
Oh, but this is really important, actually, because so there's the great the great military empire of Grand Bretagne, right? And they have the four war gods of chaos, who are the Beatles. In fact, I want to say Ringo is actually their actual Lord of Battle, which is just pure irony to me. And they have their eternal king, who is basically in this effectively like a giant tube of just a basting in chaos energy, where he's just effectively like a wizened old man and yet also a baby at the same time, just basting in like fire. And it's very heavily implied that it was supposed to be the then Prince Charles. So imagine my surprise when King Charles gets a self-portrait of him basically on fire, just like, well, looking all very regal. And I'm just like, we're in Hawkmoon, boys. We're in Hawkmoon. Well, all we need is just, the four lords of war to rise up and, have Great Britain take over Europe.
But yeah, Hawkmoon actually does have a happy ending. I mean, he marries his waifu. They survive. The whole thing.
But then they have to destroy.
He reclaims his ancestral duchy.
Are we having the entire final bit where it's the all the eternal champions have to destroy the rune staff and Stormbringer? Are we adding that too?
See, that was a retcon to his happy ending. Come on, man, because that retcons like Corum's ending too.
I guess that's true.
But
I'm not a huge fan.
Hawkmoon lives. Hawkmoon lives in the rune staff.
Yes, he does.
Hawkmoon is the only one who survives. So yes, Hawkmoon still has a happy ending.
And I don't know, I just learned about her, so I don't know if Captain Billy Bob actually gets a happy ending in the Blood trilogy. So, yes, that is the name of the heroine in that series. I don't get it either. Chaos spaceships, bro. Chaos spaceships fighting against, space law in the grand ether, trying to it sounds really cool. But,
so was there a point to any of this? I don't know. I'm like, so in conclusion, I don't.
I mean, honestly, the entire thing is that like, basically that like Warhammer just doesn't really understand even the things that they're trying to rip off. And the reason why I went and looked at that particular trilogy to begin with is because it basically has the most like succinct and understanding of the cosmology. Like if you go to Elric or any others, there's not really that much planescaping. In fact, the entire thing of like the Sailors in the Seas of Fate, and just like they're like, oh, we're gonna go cross time and space in order to fight these alien evil wizards, is a huge deal. And yet in Pooghym, it's just, yeah, we're just gonna like planescape, and it's just very matter of fact, and we're gonna just encounter Chaos Lords, and it's very matter of fact. Whereas in any of the other series, it's like these are huge beings that are very dangerous, and like they only show up at the very end of the series. So that's why I decided to go with that one, other than maybe Elric or Hawkmoon or anybody else. So yes. Plus, I don't know. It was an excuse for me to read Pooghym again, which I hadn't done in many years. So that was fun. In fact, actually, I kind of got a knowing smirk and kind of a, oh, so that's what you're doing from Papa Pooghym, because he actually saw me reading Queen of Swords, and he's like, oh, okay. So that was fun.
Papa Pooghym is a gigantic nerd, and like, we'd be like, oh, Papa Pooghym, we found out about this author that wrote all these books, and he's like, oh yeah, I remember when those books were coming out. I read that book when it first came out. Like, and you never told us about any of this shit.
Nope. In fact, Papa Pooghym actually had a number of first edition Elric books, but we did not know that for many years.
We didn't find that out until we started buying the reprinted books, and Papa Pooghym saw us reading them, and he's like, oh yeah, Michael Moorcock, Elric, I love those books. And we're like, what? You've read these? And he's like, yeah, I have first editions. He's like, what the? And you never bothered telling us about it.
Mm-mm. Nope.
I had the same thing happen when I started reading The Black Company.
I mean, it's the same thing with Dune. It's the same thing with Heinlein. It's the same thing with the Foundation series. It's fascinating to me that, Papa Pooghym is like, wow, Jitaku, you sure are a giant nerd. And then I look at his like bookshelf, and it's like pretty much everything that I'm reading is like, yeah, sure am a giant nerd.
Like, yeah, Dad,
Okay.
I'm a giant nerd. Where the fuck did I get it from?
Yeah. So yeah, that's really, all this was. It was just kind of me, like, going down a rabbit hole, reading some very old science fantasy, a chance to explain, and talk about science fantasy that I really liked. And yeah, maybe if someone will ask nicely, we'll do Hawkmoon, or we'll even go into a deep dive on Elric, because Elric, honestly, probably deserves his own actual like deep dive. Like, I'd love to go into Stormbringer and Moonglum, or even go into like the awesomeness of the pulps, because like just like even like just the some of the early stories, like the Dead Gods book, where it actually kind of hashes out like the very beginnings of the multiverse, is all really cool. Like, I was actually thinking about it, I'm like, they never really did do anything with the Mahurin people. They're supposed to be like winged people who live in sky cities, who have like a unique connection to the air spirits. And yet I think like the only one that really shows up is the one wingless Mahurin that shows up in the Dead Gods book. So I'm sorry. I know this has just basically been me like chit-chatting with my brother the whole time, guys. I didn't mean for that to happen.
I mean, that's basically what everyone signed up for when we knew what the topic of the day's video was going to be.
I mean, I kind of figured as much as well. So,
besides, I am intrigued. Everything you're saying is very interesting, and it does make me want to like check this out more in depth. This is pleasing to the autism, as it were.
Oh, absolutely. Honestly, the cool thing about Elric especially is that they are very fast reads, especially if you are reading the initial run of books. Because or not even books, stories. They're very, very brisk. Really, the funny thing about it, and Moorcock actually goes into this if you look up his Elements of Fantasy, is he explains not only why he wrote Elric the way he did, but also kind of his reasoning for doing what he did in terms of story pacing. It's very brisk. Like you think that I'm fast. This is why I am the way I am, is I'm writing, kind of in that style. And it's very matter of fact, and it's almost kind of a he in his Elements of Fantasy, he kind of brings up that his style is kind of a take that to Tolkien, who he likens to in a very disparaging way to epic Winnie the Pooh, shall we say. He's not a fan. And so it's very much, if you're like going into this thinking like, oh, this is going to be very slow, very plodding, there's not going to be a whole lot going on. It's not. It is very fast. In fact, there are actually several stories where it's just Elric minding his own business, and then suddenly a demon shows up, or just bad guys show up, and it's just, he then has to react to it. Very cool stuff. I would definitely recommend it. Be sure to look up the collections, because you definitely want to read the pulps. If you go into it reading, like starting with Stormbringer, you're going to be disappointed, because you're like, why is everybody dying? It's like, because that's technically the very end of the overarching story. I want to say the latest collection is Elric, Stealer of Souls. Is that the one that you have, Noodle?
I think that's the first one that was printed, was Stealer of Souls. The first of the collections. That was the one that has Stormbringer in it.
Yes, that's the one that has the Dreaming City, Dead God's Book. Like I want to say the Lord, the Burning Lord, and it's Stormbringer. It's not the one with. It's not the one with the sailors on the Seas of Fate from Elric's perspective, or any of those. But definitely a recommend from Ditaku.
Definitely a recommend from Noodle as well.
Yeah.
I'll have to add it to my list of books to read, which is very large, and not shrinking anytime soon, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, it's obvious you guys are passionate and like really into these stories, and I think that's really cool. Like, I think that's kind of like what makes the Tomo Bros tick, is that we all bring our own unique flavor of weirdness to the table.
I mean, honestly, I was thinking about it. I'm like, for how like violently anti-Tolkien he is, I was just like, I'm now imagining, what an Exalted would be like if, instead of focusing on Eastern mysticism, it focused on swords and sorcery, akin to Moorcock. And I'm like, oh, that would be awesome. That would be very awesome. And also probably like very like, I summon, I roll to summon an ancient cosmic demon. Oh no, I failed. I am now sucked into limbo. Oops.
I do have a copy of the Elric RPG.
Oh, jeez.
We can play that if you want to. Tomo Bros, let's play Elric of Melnibone.
Oh boy.
Is it any good?
It's a D100 system. So basically it's like Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay or Dark Heresy.
All right.
Yeah, I can't say if it's a particularly well-balanced system, but it's a trip.
Would you allow me to play one of the Chaos Sorcerers Pontang.
Let me see if that's allowed as I go over to my bookshelf and pull out the Stormbringer Dark Fantasy role-playing.
Well, I'm just saying, like, I don't think that playing a Melnibonian would be good because it's like, yes, I am a Melnibonian. Hey guys, I'm just Jim from the Young Kingdoms. Oh, well, you know what's my culture? What's that, Mr. Melnibonian? It's to peel, humans alive like grapes. What? Yep.
I think you could play an Antangian sorcerer if you wanted to.
Yeah, because they were the humans that were aligned with the Chaos Lords. So
Yep.
I would imagine they would be allowed.
Yeah, so you could play a Melnibonian, you could play a half Melnibonian, you could play a Mahurin, and if you play a Mahurin, you could specifically play a wingless Mahurin, which is in fact different from playing a human.
Yes, just so you're aware, ladies and gentlemen, you can and actually actively apparently decide to go, yes, I'm going to play a deliberately disabled character who is deeply shamed within their own culture, to the point that a lady who is disabled in this way decides to find the last will and testament of dead gods, which was hurled into the sun, so then she can regrow her wings that she never had. And oh, by the way, Elric is there too, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll help you find this last will and testament of dead gods." But why would you want it? Oh, just to see if there actually is meaning to all of life and reality. Wow, that's heavy, man. Do you need a hug?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
So yes, you could play an Antangian sorcerer. Has an entire mechanic for having allegiance to law, chaos, and the balance. And what happens if you become a champion of law, champion of chaos, or champion of the balance? And then what happens if you reach apotheosis with each of those things? It's a pretty interesting system, not gonna lie.
All right, that'd be something to explore at some point for sure. Now, that being said, do we have any final comments?
I mean, of the topic itself, it was I've always been more keen to the stories where they have, instead of it being good versus evil, being more of like just chaos versus not necessarily law, but static nothingness, not nothingness, but stillness, because I feel like it's more in keen and it's more interesting than it just being a set good versus evil. At least as I've gone more.
So that is something that is explored more in other stories, specifically the Elric stories, about what will happen if law or chaos ultimately win, and what things are like. And it is explored a little bit, though kind of glossed over in some of the things in Quorum, with that ultimately, if law wins, then basically it becomes eternal stagnation. Just the time stops to flow, and everything is just basically stuck exactly how it is for the rest of eternity.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
If chaos wins, then stuff eventually just becomes endless energy and ultimately just kind of turns into a gray mist, because nothing can be solid for long enough to actually exist, because then it would just be chaos out of existence. But yeah, it's in some of the Elric stories, they actually go to some planes that law has won, and it's just basically people they just go there, and it's just like everyone basically is like just a statue, just like living statues.
Mm-hmm.
Because like nothing is allowed to happen, because if something happens, then disorder will take place.
But don't worry, guys. Arkin and Domblas and the other Lords of Law are the good guys. We swear.
Well, they are good guys because gooder than chaos because at least they respect the laws of the balance. And that's kind of the thing of like they're less terrible than the laws of chaos because the balance puts restriction on them to keep them from being total assholes, and because they are bound to obey rules because to disobey the rules would be unlawful. Yeah, they have to play by the rules that law sets, as opposed to chaos, which is constantly trying to do as Ariosh did in the first Quorum book and try and skirt around those restrictions.
Okay, that is interesting. I think that there's so much love for the law chaos dichotomy in the popular culture these days. I think means that people should check out the origins of them to get a better handle on what it looks like in motion.
Mhm. Exactly.
As I've said, Moorcock basically is the father, more even than Tolkien. Like, I think Tolkien is a huge influence on popular culture, but like Moorcock is just like his fingerprints are in everything, and it is like criminal how little people are aware of it. It's really sad, and honestly, it's because people just steal from him all the time, and he's just like, yeah, man, it doesn't matter. He's like,
As long as they can steal, he basically says, as long they can steal my ideas as much as they want, as long as they don't steal my characters.
yes,
And
which
so,
is why he specifically went after The Witcher, as opposed to Games Workshop.
You stole Elric, man, and I'm like, well,
you stole Elric and filed the serial numbers off.
He doesn't even have Stormbringers. Like, you have like the Kroger brand Wish.com version of Elric.
You're showing your age now, Ditaku. It's the Tomo version now.
Oh.
I mean,
say what fade to dust.
Say what you will about, say what you will about The Witcher being off-brand Elric. At least it gave us, some interesting video games. So I can't really call it the Tomo version because then nothing of that.
Fair.
I don't know about the first game. I heard the first game is pretty jank unless you fix it yourself.
Perhaps the same can be said of all AAA titles. Perhaps the same could be said of all video games.
No, you can't. Some soft games because it's amazing.
I was about to say, it's like, this is coming from a guy who's like, no, guys, you don't understand. Cyberpunk 2077 is a masterpiece. I'm like, it's definitely something.
They called a masterpiece. I said it's a good game. When is a good game a masterpiece?
I mean, my favorite game is Bloodlines. I know it's jank POS.
All right, I think we're missing the target a little bit. Yeah. We're 2 hours into this, so let's just bring this one to an end, gentlemen. Thank you for joining me.
No problem. Hopefully, I can jump on more often. And the not, I do miss the talking and the what the kids call it now, the yapping.
Well, Professor, I was far more yappy than you could ever be. And then Ditaku flew off, cursing the cosmic balance and his own bank balance and Jimmy.
Well, I mean, when he's right, he is technically correct. All right, everyone. We will see you in the next one.
Later.
Screw you, Jimmy.